Marcus's graduation from law school was supposed to be the crowning achievement of the Sullivan family. 3 years at Harvard Law summa cum laude, and a position waiting at Dad's prestigious firm. The whole extended family had gathered at the Cambridge campus to celebrate the golden child's latest triumph. I arrived at the ceremony venue 30 minutes early, hoping to find decent seats for what promised to be a long afternoon of listening to how brilliant my older brother was. Anna. Mom spotted me immediately, though her smile seemed forced. You actually came. Of course I came. It's Marcus's graduation. Well, we know how busy you've been with your government work. The way she said government work made it sound like I was processing parking tickets instead of working in national security. Dad appeared beside her, adjusting his tie. Anna, good to see you. How's the job in Washington? It's going well. Still doing that policy analysis thing? This from my Uncle Robert, who'd never quite understood what I did for a living beyond knowing it involved the federal government and a security clearance. Something like that. The truth was more complicated. For the past 3 years, I'd been working as a senior advisor on national security policy, reporting directly to the National Security Council. My clearance level was higher than most cabinet members, and my recommendations influenced decisions that affected global politics. But explaining that to my family had always been impossible. Partly because of classification restrictions and partly because they'd never shown much interest in my career. Well, I'm sure it's important work, Mom said in the tone she used when discussing hobbies. Marcus is so excited about joining the firm. He'll be making partner track in just a few years. The conversation was interrupted by Marcus himself, resplendent in his graduation robes and radiating confidence. At 28 he had Dad's commanding presence and Mom's social grace, plus the kind of effortless charisma that made people want to invest in whatever he was selling. Anna. He embraced me warmly, though I noticed he quickly turned his attention to the relatives clustered around us. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. This means everything to me. We wouldn't miss it, sweetheart, Aunt Linda gushed. Harvard Law. We're all so proud. Marcus beamed. It's been an incredible 3 years. The networking alone has been worth the investment. I've already got connections at 3 Supreme Court justices' chambers. The family murmured appreciatively. This was vintage Marcus. Always working the room, always positioning himself as the center of attention. What about you, Anna? Uncle Robert asked. Any exciting developments in your government work? Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in. Anna's been doing great work in D.C. Very administrative. Very important behind-the-scenes stuff. The dismissal was subtle but effective. Marcus had reduced my role to administrative and behind-the-scenes, code for invisible and unimportant. Administrative work is so valuable, Aunt Linda agreed. Someone has to handle the paperwork. I felt the familiar heat rising in my chest. It's not exactly paperwork. What is it exactly? Dad asked, though his attention was already drifting toward the auditorium entrance. How could I explain that I spent my days briefing cabinet members on international threats? That my analysis had influenced the president's response to 3 major crises this year? That foreign intelligence services considered me important enough to warrant surveillance? National security policy, I said simply. Right, policy. Marcus nodded like he was humoring a child. Very technical stuff. Anna's always been good with details. The conversation was interrupted by the announcement that guests should take their seats. Marcus's graduation class was large, and the auditorium was packed with proud families ready to celebrate their children's achievements. "SIT in the back," Marcus commanded as we headed toward the entrance. "I've got the first few rows reserved for VIP family and my law review friends." I looked around at our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, all filing toward the front of the auditorium while I was directed toward the back like a second-tier relative. "The back?" I asked. "Just so there's room for everyone important," Marcus said quickly. "You understand." I understood perfectly. Marcus had divided his guests into tiers, and I'd been relegated to the bottom category. The message was clear. My presence was tolerated but not particularly valued. As I made my way to the back rows, I passed clusters of my relatives settling into premium seats. Mom and Dad in the front row. Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert in the second row. Marcus's law school friends occupying an entire section near the stage. And me, alone in the back, surrounded by strangers who'd also arrived late or been deemed insufficiently important for better seating. The ceremony began with the usual academic pomp: processional music, faculty in elaborate robes, speeches about the future leaders of American jurisprudence. I sat in my distant seat, watching my family beam with pride as Marcus's graduating class filed across the stage. When his name was called, they erupted in cheers. Dad stood up and applauded. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The entire extended family made sure everyone in the auditorium knew that Harvard Law graduate Marcus Sullivan belonged to them. I clapped politely from the back row, feeling oddly detached from the celebration. This was how family events always went. Marcus at the center, basking in recognition, while I existed in the background like expensive furniture nobody really noticed. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the law school courtyard. I waited for the crowds to thin before making my way outside, where I found my family clustered around Marcus, taking photos and making plans for the celebration dinner. "Anna," Mom called when she spotted me. "Come take a picture with Marcus." I joined the group photo, standing slightly behind everyone else while Marcus held his diploma and grinned for the camera. After several shots, the photographer, one of Marcus's law school friends, started arranging smaller groupings. "Let's do immediate family only," he suggested. I started to step forward, but Marcus held up his hand. "Actually, let's do parents and grandparents first. Anna, would you mind taking the photo?" The request hit like a slap. I wasn't immediate family for photo purposes. I was the designated photographer. I took their camera and spent the next 10 minutes capturing various combinations of my relatives while being systematically excluded from each shot. Parents with Marcus. Grandparents with Marcus. Aunts and uncles with Marcus. Everyone with Marcus except his sister. "These are perfect," Mom said, reviewing the photos on the camera. "Marcus looks so handsome in his robes." "We should frame the one with the whole family," Dad suggested. "Which one?" I asked. "The one with everyone important," Marcus said, then seemed to realize how that sounded. "I mean everyone who lives locally. Since you're in DC and all." The excuse was thin, but no one challenged it. I wasn't in the family photos because I lived in the wrong city, worked in the wrong field, and apparently mattered less than everyone else. That's when I noticed the two men in dark suits approaching our group. They moved with the kind of purposeful precision that immediately caught my attention. Government training had taught me to recognize protective details, and these men had all the telltale signs: earpieces, subtle communication patterns, eyes constantly scanning the crowd. "Excuse me," the lead agent said, approaching me directly. "Miss Sullivan? Agent Rodriguez, Secret Service. We need to escort you to your vehicle." The conversation around me stopped immediately. "Secret Service?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Agent Rodriguez nodded professionally. "Ma'am, we've received credible intelligence about a potential threat. Standard protocol requires immediate relocation to a secure location." Marcus was staring at the agents like they were aliens. "What kind of threat?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss operational details, sir." Rodriguez turned back to me. "Miss Sullivan, if you're ready." That's when I noticed the third agent approaching with something in his hand. A small leather folder with an unmistakable seal embossed on the cover. "Your briefing materials from the NC," he said quietly, handing me the folder. "The president wants your assessment on the situation before tonight's cabinet meeting." The words hung in the air like smoke. President. Cabinet meeting. Dad's mouth fell open. "The president?" "Ma'am," Agent Rodriguez said to me, "we need to move." Marcus's diploma slipped from his hands and hit the ground as he stared at the presidential seal on my briefing folder. "Anna," he said faintly, "what's happening?" I looked around at my family's stunned faces. Mom was gripping Dad's arm like she needed support. Uncle Robert was staring at the Secret Service agents like he couldn't quite believe they were real. "I work for the president," I said simply. "Senior advisor on national security policy. The administrative work involves briefing cabinet members and analyzing threats to American interests." Agent Rodriguez stepped closer. "Ma'am, we really need to go." "Of course." I turned to my family. "Congratulations on your graduation, Marcus. I'm sorry I have to leave early." "Wait," Dad called out as I started walking toward the black SUV that had appeared at the courtyard entrance. "Anna, we didn't know. You never said. You never asked." And when I tried to explain, Marcus called it administrative work. And you moved on to more interesting topics. Mom was crying now. But the president? You work for the actual president. For the past 3 years. The job that wasn't important enough to get me a seat in the front row or included in family photos. I could see other graduation families staring as the Secret Service detail formed a protective formation around me. Several people had their phones out recording the unusual scene. "Miss Sullivan," Agent Rodriguez said gently, "the vehicle is ready." As we walked toward the SUV, I heard Marcus behind me. "Anna, wait. I need to understand what just happened." I turned back one more time. My family was standing in a cluster looking shell-shocked and confused. Marcus had picked up his diploma but seemed to have forgotten he was holding it. "What happened," I said, "is that while you were networking with Supreme Court clerks, I was helping prevent international crises. While you were making law review, I was briefing the president on matters of national security. While you were celebrating your graduation, I was doing work that actually affects millions of lives." Dad stepped forward. "Anna, why didn't you tell us?" "Because every time I mentioned my work, you redirected the conversation to Marcus's achievements. Because you'd already decided my career was less important than his. Because you relegated me to the back row and excluded me from family photos." Agent Rodriguez opened the SUV door. "Ma'am." I got into the vehicle, rolling down the window as we prepared to leave. "Congratulations again, Marcus. I'm sure you'll do great things at Dad's firm. Maybe someday you'll represent clients as important as the ones I brief every day." As we pulled away, I saw my family still standing in the courtyard, watching the Secret Service motorcade disappear into Boston traffic. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Rodriguez. "ETA to the airport is 15 minutes. Air Force transport is standing by for immediate departure to Washington." My assistant texted, "The president moved the cabinet meeting to 6 p.m. Your briefing is first." I smiled. In 3 hours I'd be in the Situation Room shaping U.S. foreign policy. The administrative work my family mocked was guiding global security. My phone rang. "Marcus." "Anna, I don't understand. The Secret Service? The president?" "It's simple. While you built a legal career, I built something bigger. You impressed professors. I impressed the people who run the country. But you never said. You never cared to ask. You assumed my work didn't matter." Silence. Then, "Anna, I'm sorry. We all are. We should have listened." "Yes. But that's not my problem anymore." As the SUV reached the Air Force jet, I said, "For 3 years I wanted your respect. Today I realized I don't need it. I have the respect of people who matter. We matter. We're your family. Family doesn't cut you from photos or call your career a joke." The car stopped. "I have to go, Marcus. The president is waiting. Can we fix this later?" "Maybe. But next time I pick the seating chart." I ended the call and boarded. In 90 minutes I'd brief the president. Tomorrow Marcus would start at his law firm. Tonight I was advising the leader of the free world. And for the first time I knew who was truly successful.